Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue dans un nouvel épisode du podcast Learn to French. Je m'appelle Eden et j'enseigne le français. Hello and welcome to another episode on the Learn to French podcast. If you are new here, my name is Eden and I teach French. So today's episode is for A1 learners, but also A2 learners. I think this is a good episode for you to go through what you should have learned by now or what you are going to learn if you are an A1 learner. Learning French as a beginner can be a little confusing, but even if you are not a beginner, you might have missed some crucial points to learn. So that's why today I suggest you to take a quick look at this A1 French study guide and organize your learning. You can simply click on the show notes if you would like to read everything. So first of all, why do you need an A1 French study guide? There are many reasons for you to need a clear study guide, but the main one would be you're learning French by yourself and you would like to know what exactly you should focus on. If you're planning on taking the DELF A1 exam, for example, it's always good to have an overview of the most important things to learn. That way, you don't get lost because there are many informations, especially when you're learning French by yourself or any other language. You need to have a little bit of an organized view. So how should you use this A1 French study guide? In this study guide, I will obviously not be writing down everything, all the lessons, everything that you have to know by now, for two main reasons. First of all, I could link everything, every resource, but doing so would, first of all, if I had to write all of the articles, as of now, it would take an incredible amount of time and you would most probably be dropping out after a few minutes. So there's no need to do that. Reading can get very boring. The second reason is that I want to encourage you to do things by yourself. I have worked with all kinds of students at all levels, but there is one thing that we do during or after our classes, that is. And this thing is highly effective. If a student, for example, asks me a question, and if I think that they can find the answer by themselves, I let them do it. If they don't understand a word and are asking for the translation, for example, like we're having a lesson and they would say, ça veut dire quoi, ce mot? What does this word mean? I tell them to check in the dictionary instead of directly telling them what this word means. So I'm telling them to do something to answer to their own question. We can also work on tasks and homework. I always insist on doing things by themselves. So no matter what the task is, I would like them to use the tools that they need, go on the internet, and by doing so, the learner will be able to remember the steps that they took to get to where they are, which makes memorization much easier. If you do the steps by yourself, you'll be able to remember how you did it and therefore answer your questions much easily. Of course, if it's too complicated, then the student comes back to me and says, I tried doing it, but it was too complicated. So that's where you can turn to your teacher. So in order to give you a nice and clean A1 French study guide, I would like to break the elements into different categories: vocabulary, grammar, phonetic, and conjugation. That way, you'll be able to classify them and be more organized. In each section, you will find the elements to learn. So you can click on the link in the show notes, you'll be able to read everything. And all you need to do is your own research. So Google is your friend. So you have something to learn, you Google it, you do everything you can to learn it. So for example, once you have taken a look at this information, you can create a checklist titled A1 French Study Guide. Or you can organize your findings in a binder or a folder on your computer. It can also be a notebook. But make sure to organize everything. Also, you can work on exercises. There are plenty of them online. So why should you learn vocabulary, grammar, phonetic, and conjugation? Well, vocabulary includes the lexicon of a specific theme or topic in French. Grammar, la grammaire, includes essential grammar points to master in order to be able to communicate and build sentences. La phonétique, phonetics, are basically the things to know about phonetics of the French language. This will help you not only understand French better, but also pronounce words in French. And lastly, conjugation is important, and you have to make sure to include it in your learning as it is essential to communication. I would like to talk about something in the past, in the present, or in the future. Well, for that, you're going to need conjugation. So let's take a quick look at the vocabulary. There are some things that you should learn for vocabulary in A1. Donc les nombres cardinaux, cardinal numbers, la famille, family, l'apparence physique, physical appearance, la maison ou le foyer, the home or the household, l'habillement, dressing, les fruits, les légumes, les ingrédients de base dans la cuisine, fruits, vegetables, and basic ingredients in the kitchen. Les lieux publics et les commerces, public places and stores, les boissons, drinks, les nombres ordinaux, so ordinal numbers, the first, second, the third, le premier, le deuxième, le troisième, les émotions et sentiments, emotions and feelings, la météo, the weather, les vacances, holidays, les moyens de transport, means of transportation, les animaux domestiques, pets, les jours de la semaine et les mois de l'année, days of the week and months. So this is the basic vocabulary that you should learn in A1 French. Of course, I always encourage you to enrich your vocabulary by reading, watching stuff on television or Netflix, basically exposing yourself to the French language. But let's say if you learn this, all of these elements that I've just told you about, I think you could be good for the DELF A1 exam. Of course, we're going to see grammar, phonetics, and conjugation. So for grammar, there are a lot of things to learn. I will not go through all of them right now because it might sound boring and I don't want you to fall asleep. So you can simply click on the link in the show notes and read the part where it says Grammaire A1. And basically, if you do that, you'll be able to gather all the grammar points that you should learn for A1 and before moving on to A2 and also before taking your DELF A1 exam. So you can either Google these grammar points in French or in English because you might also find lessons in English. La phonétique, so phonetics. Phonetics is about pronunciation. And here are the main points that you should learn that are going to help you feel more comfortable in French. So first of all is l'alphabet français et les accents, the French alphabet and accents. Les syllabes en français, syllables in French. La lettre et le son R, so the letter and the sound R, the letter R in French. La lettre J et le son J, so the letter J and the sound J, you need to know how to pronounce that. La prononciation des lettres en fin de mot. So pronunciation or not of letters at the end of a word, because there are a lot of silent letters at the end of French words. Les voyelles nasales, so nasal vowels. En, un, on. These also are very important because they only exist in the French language. La prononciation de GN, N. So the pronunciation of G and N. N. The letters S and SS in a word. So how to pronounce that? Everything is about pronunciation in phonetics. La prononciation de la lettre G. So how to pronounce the letter G in French depending on what's following this letter. Same thing for the letter C. La prononciation de la lettre C. So how are you going to pronounce the letter C if it's in the middle of a word, for example? Ensuite, la conjugaison. So the next and final part is going to be conjugation. Here as well, there are many elements, but we can go through them actually. The first part of conjugation is the main verbs. So être, to be, avoir, s'appeler et venir au présent de l'indicatif. So the verbs être, avoir, s'appeler and venir conjugated at the present tense. Les modes et les temps de conjugaison. Conjugation moods and tenses. Les trois groupes de verbes, the three groups of verbs. So verbs in ER, verbs in IR, and the third group, verbs. La conjugaison des verbes du premier groupe et du deuxième groupe au présent. So the conjugation of first and second group verbs at the present tense in French. Les verbes irréguliers au présent, irregular verbs at the present tense. So usually you can find many lists of irregular verbs in French. However, I would still suggest you to maybe write down each verb that you come across and keep maybe a notebook and then have a list of those new verbs and go ahead and conjugate them yourself or look for the conjugation online for each verb. You can find many conjugators online. Les verbes pronominaux au présent, so pronominal verbs at the present tense. Pronominal, for example, reflexive verbs are part of pronominal verbs. Les verbes faire, aller au présent, so the verbs faire and aller at the present tense as well, very important, because we use them often. Le passé composé et le participe passé, so passé composé and past participle, past tense in French. Le futur proche, the near future, le futur simple, future tense, l'imparfait, imperfect tense, l'impératif présent, and the imperative present. Now don't forget that you can click on the link in the show notes if you want to read everything or maybe print the article. Now, of course, all of this information in my study guide might seem overwhelming, but I tried to make it as simple as possible, as minimal as possible. If you learn everything by topic or by theme, for example, how to buy something in a store, how to talk about this or that, basically how-to stuff. That's what I call a topic or a theme. You will be able to memorize all of this way better because you would be applying it in the proper context. So everything is about context when you learn a language. You can't just learn grammar or vocabulary or conjugation without the context because you're going to forget about it. So think about learning things into context and by theme. And this will help you memorize things much better. Et voilà, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want more stuff like this, you can simply head over to learntofrench.com and you can listen to all the episodes or simply take a look at all of the articles that I've written. Merci beaucoup d'être resté avec moi aujourd'hui et je vous dis à très bientôt pour un nouvel épisode sur Learn to French. Au revoir!